Today in the podcast, I'm going to tell you about a secret place that will take you back in time. Welcome to the Lost Valley of County Mayo. Thank you for tuning in to the Traveling in Ireland podcast. Today I'm talking with Gerard Bourke, who is a sixth-generation landowner at one of the furthest reaches in County Mayo that you can get. And he and his family have created a very unique and touching destination for you to visit. So, Gerard, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jody.
And I want to go into a little bit on the Lost Valley. Now, I first heard of it, maybe a year ago. You had actually contacted me, and we talked back and forth a little bit. And then last year, my husband and my youngest daughter and I visited. And I have to admit that it was one of the most moving and personal. I don't know. It was one of those experiences that really reached in and kind of grabbed me and has stuck with me. And, beyond the natural beauty and everything, just the history of your area has made such an impression. And so I definitely wanted to share your Lost Valley experience with people who are thinking of traveling to Ireland.
Very good, Jody, very good. No, we get that. I have to say that practically everybody who has visited us has gone home very satisfied. It's the history. The Lost Valley is probably the memorial of the Great Famine, for example, that exists today,
Right.
There's an immense amount of history in the Lost Valley. I suppose it's a very remote valley in the mountains, and it was only in 1989 that we succeeded in finally making a roadway into it.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, for many generations, my family had walked 2 miles across the mountainside to get out to the public road. So there was no machinery of any sort ever getting in there, and the result is that it's totally unspoiled.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the time of the Irish famine in the mid-1800s, there were over 100 people living in the valley, with 89 actually on the 1841 census living in the deserted village itself,
mm-hmm.
in the valley. But, because of immigration and evictions, only the Bourke family were left there for the past 170 years.
That's
my own family have been in there. I mean, my great, the rent records show that my great-grandfather, Pat Bourke, lived there with his family in the early 1800s. And my great-grandfather, Michael Bourke, was head of the household during the famine years. His eldest son, my great-grandfather, Jack Bourke, was 13 years old when the family were evicted during the famine. But Michael moved his family back into the Lost Valley after the famine, when he got employment as a herdsman, working for the new landlord. And basically because of that, the Bourke family have been there ever since. As I say, they have had to traverse the mountainside on foot up until myself and my wife Maureen succeeded in making a road in there,
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I suppose, Jody, everything is totally unspoiled. Even the stones, the piles of stones that were picked by the pre-famine potato cultivators,
Mm-hmm.
are still remain there in piles, exactly where they left them, So it's kind of unique in that respect, And of course, you go on, Jody, go on.
I was just going to say that it truly is. I mean, it feels like when you walk back into it that you're walking back in time. I mean, it truly feels like you are leaving, 2016, 2017, and every step you take takes you back, about 20 years until you get down into the valley, and you truly feel like you have stepped back 150, 200 years in time. It does feel that unspoiled. It's amazing.
Oh yes. Because I suppose the rich heritage that's in there is so unique that at this point we have multiple designations, protective designations being put on the valley. You know, it's been classified as an area of special scenic importance, a special amenity area, a national heritage area, a special area of conservation under the European Habitats Directive, all to protect the uniqueness of it, you know.
Right. Now, were those designations that you went out to get to kind of help? No, they actually were not. They were imposed from the top, if you like, you know. Yeah.
Sometimes you see that the issue with these designations, a race, but they restrict. A lot of landowners wouldn't be that fond of them now.
Right.
We don't mind because we're not going to develop the valley anyway.
Right.
But they're basically a set of restrictions on landowners, really, you know.
On what you can do with your land and how you can use it and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have no problem with that because we don't want to spoil it anyway.
Right.
Absolutely. We want to keep it the way it is.
Now I know that when we visited, you do have quite a flock of, is it a flock of sheep, a herd of sheep?
Yeah, I have a good flock of sheep. Yes.
But and they kind of keep the grounds somewhat maintained and short, if I'm correct. But then growing the herd isn't going to be a possibility with the restrictions on there. So the farming aspect of the land is kind of settled as in how much you can do with it. Okay.
It would be very difficult to progress the farming any further, yes, because we're subjected to quotas now.
Right.
That we have to, in order to maintain the landscape properly, we have to have a minimum and maximum, stay between the minimum and maximum numbers of sheep, you know, which is okay too, because given that we're interested in the tourism aspect of it, you know, we're quite happy with all of that, you know.
Right. Now, I know that when we walked back into the valley, like you said, you've kind of built a road back into there, and what you do on the tour is you walk through the path, which really leads you from the one single road that leads down to Silver Strand. So your area is incredibly remote. You kind of, it's like turn here and then go until the road ends and you've arrived. You know, you're going into the Uggool Valley, or you're going into the ocean. It's one or the other. Yes.
It is very remote. No question about that.
And then you walk and you have, you know, the mountains rising on one side of you, and then on the other side of you, the land kind of falls away, you know, gently in places, not so gently in others. And all you can see below you is potato ridges leading to the ocean. And these potato ridges have been there for a century at least, right?
They have been there for at least 170 years.
Oh, wow.
Because when the people, during the famine, all of the people were subjected to mass evictions, you know, because the entire area, the landlord wanted to create a 50,000 acre sheep and cattle farm. So he evicted all of the people during the famine. And the potato ridges that remain there are absolutely authentic in the sense that they have never been touched since the sheep and cattle farm, since the place was turned into a sheep and cattle farm, you know. Also, of course, the remoteness helps to protect them, you know, the inaccessibility of the valley, you know.
Right. So nobody has ever, you know, kind of done a little archaeological dig into one to see, you know, I mean, would there even be anything there anymore? Or would the potatoes that during the famine had turned rotten, would those have just gone back into the soil by now?
They would be gone back into the soil, but unquestionably the potato ridges are there for the purpose of potato cultivation. There's no question about that. As for doing archaeological digs, I would say the people who lived in the valley were Celtic Catholics. they were poor people. They
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be any value to dig for.
Right, right. But that being said, I know that looking at the history of the area, and we talked about this, they actually had their stone cottages were quite nice for the history of the area, because they were so remote. They weren't really being checked up on by the landlord, so they were able to live.
Yes, it's quite extraordinary. But the standard of living in the valley was very significantly above the standard of living in the general area because of the remoteness of it. The tendency at the time was, it was hard times in Ireland. We were coming out of 100 to 150 years of what they called the penal laws,
Mm-hmm.
which were designed to keep the Celtic Catholics from ever threatening the ascendancy again. They deprived them from an education, from marrying a Protestant, from living in a town, a whole range of things. And the result of this was that the landlord seen his role as being sort of his duty to keep these people as poor as he possibly
Mm-hmm.
could, or so it would seem,
Mm-hmm.
But because the Lost Valley was so inaccessible, he was happy to get his few pound rent out of it.
Right.
I suppose.
Right.
And he didn't go very often. But the practice would have been to raise the rent. At the time, if you built a stone wall around your potato patch, your rent went up. If you had a good house, your rent went up. And so most of the people were living in pretty discrepant dwellings, whereas the people in the Lost Valley had good, solid houses because they weren't being eyeballed as often, if you like. They were
Right.
getting away with a better quality of life,
Isn't that funny? Now, I know that, like many, when you were young, you left Ireland, and then you ended up coming back to your family's land and really looking at it with almost a different eye, a different respect, which led you to creating, this tour and really seeing the importance of the area. And what really brought you to that point? What made you decide that this was something to pursue?
I think when you grow up someplace, you just take it for granted,
Mm-hmm.
You don't know anything else to compare it with. So you think, you just assume that every place is pretty much on a par with it. But when you go away and see what's everywhere else and come back and you can see it with fresh eyes and you can see the beauty of it and the uniqueness of it, And when you're growing up in an isolated place like this, you just don't appreciate it. I mean, in many ways, it was a fantastic place to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
There was great freedom. But as a child, you just don't know anything else, so you embrace what you had, But looking back, it was definitely a hard, tough existence now.
Right.
When my dad married, he moved from the ancestral home in the village, in the old deserted village, to a location about halfway between the village and the public road.
Mm-hmm.
But we still had about a mile of the mountainside to cross, on our way from our new home to the public road, if you see what I mean.
Right.
So, that wasn't ideal when you had to go to walk to school every day, And the schoolhouse was another 2 miles down the road. So it was a journey of about over an hour,
So
we were always late for school. But we were never scolded because the teacher understood our predicament,
Right.
if you like. But we didn't know any different, so we were quite happy doing it.
right, over the mountain, so uphill both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, I remember one distinct occasion, there was a river between the house and the public road,
Mm-hmm.
and it came down from the mountain, and it would flood very quickly during heavy rain. But then equally in summertime it could reduce to a trickle,
Right.
But I remember one time when I was about 8 years old, and we were at school, and it rained all day. And we walked back home in the rain, but when we came to the river, it was a raging torrent and totally impassable. My dad was sitting on the other side, warning us not to attempt to cross,
Uh-huh.
and we were wet to the bone. But we sat there for hours, a good full 4 hours, I would say, before the flood went down enough so that he felt it was safe for him to come across and carry us back over the river. But it's at times like that, I'll tell you, you'd be forgiven for wishing that you were born someplace else,
Right.
But, youth is wonderful, and when the long summer days came, you soon forgot those kind of things, I'd have great memories. I remember playing in the rural village,
Mm-hmm.
when I was very young. So my dad's sheep handling facilities were were beside it, so we spent a lot of time there,
Right.
myself and my brother. But in my mind's eye, I could see the place alive with people, coming and going. And I'd actually pretend I was playing with the children. Indeed, I often reflect on the nervous imaginations, that children actually have, I could play at that game for hours without getting bored. Or perhaps I was playing because I was bored, I don't know which. These are great memories, they're great memories to have.
It's kind of amazing because growing up, especially in the United States and in a very rural area myself, and my mother grew up in a very rural area, but hearing your stories of, walking to school still at about the same time my mother would have been, or even a little after, makes me realize just how remote that area is, and in comparison to what we would consider remote, where they actually had a school bus that would pick them up and take them into school. It's quite a difference when I can kind of compare it in that way. Can you tell me, when did electricity and running water get out to the Uggool Valley?
I was actually away in England
when
the electricity arrived in the valley, yes.
So after you became an adult?
And telephone, after I was an adult, absolutely, yes. Okay. We grew up without TV.
Not such a bad thing, I don't think. looking at it.
Well, I say, what you don't have, you don't miss,
That is very true.
We had a piped gas for lighting around the house, for lighting and heating. But no electricity, no.
Wow. It's just really kind of amazing when you think about it. I mean, that just shows you how remote the area is,
Yeah, we're actually in the extreme southwest corner of Mayo, just at the mouth of Killary Fjord. There's nowhere else you can go except across the Atlantic in your direction.
Now, I want to talk about the tour a little bit because it really is a wonderful tour, but it's, obviously it's not a tour for people who may have mobility issues because it does involve quite a lot of walking. And it's not a hard walk, but it is quite a long walk, and it's not, along a completely flat and like a cemented path or anything.
No, indeed, it's a green road that we made, I like to think that we go at a nice leisurely pace. We always think it's suitable for all ages. But you don't want to have mobility issues, I agree with you there. But the tour is conducted at a nice leisurely pace.
Oh, it is. I mean, it was beautifully done. I didn't know that we walked that far by the time we were done.
Yeah. We find we have children and we have people in their 80s, but they're good mobile people right now, all right. Because it is pushing on. By the time we've visited the trail around the valley and visited all the different points of interest, by the time we're back at the car park, we've covered pushing for 5 kilometers.
Exactly.
But that's over 3 hours, so it's nice and leisurely.
Yes, it's a great
call
walk.
It a fully guided cultural. We call it a fully guided cultural adventure, Jody. And that's exactly what it is.
And it is. I mean, you took us up. And, up into, I don't want to say into the mountains, but up around the kind of the very base of the mountains where you were looking down. And then, into the famine village and across a beautiful, just the most picturesque, beautiful waterfall-filled creek. And then you took us to, you restored, actually, the home your father grew up in, correct?
Yes.
And that was a real treat. Can you tell me about that process of restoring that? That was quite a lot of work, it seems.
Well, it was, but the roof had actually fallen off it,
Mm-hmm.
And it must be 20 years ago now. We decided, because there was so much history in it, so much of my family's history in it. I mean, my great-great-great-grandfather lived there at the turn of the 1800s, So we go way back there, and it was just a shame to let it fall apart, So we got our cottage up and went and put a simple enough roof on it, really, Jody, because if a building is roofed, if an old stone building is roofed, it will preserve it for a long, long time. So you can stop the water from going down through the walls,
Right.
So that's basically all we did with it, really, we just re-roofed it.
And walking in was like, again, I have said stepping back in time about this, about your tour a few times now, but I mean, you walk in and it truly is, the turf fire when you walk in is going. Your lovely wife has a kettle on and she's got biscuits out and she has the turf fire going and you're walking into, a cozy home 150 years ago.
You're walking into a lot of history. That's what you're walking into. You're walking into a great deal of history. I remember on one occasion we had a school tour back there, and the teachers had them sitting down on the floor, telling them about the history of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what kids. One guy, and he wasn't any more than I'd say 9 or 10, and he just looked up and he goes, "Oh, isn't it a pity that this house couldn't talk?"
Oh,
and
right.
He stunned everybody. Because the story the house could tell, what conversations it had listened to, it's fascinating, the way children's minds work. If it could recount stories it had heard, yes.
Well, I know that my youngest did the tour with us. My eldest was away at maths camp, but my youngest did the tour with us, and, at 10 years old, she wasn't a bit bored. She kind of did the same thing when we were out, with the sheep and with the trees and with the ruins. She really felt a connection there as well and kind of went to the, if only I knew the stories that are so deeply rooted here. So she kind of went the same way. And I think that children's imaginations and also their openness to know is really quite a blessing in that way.
Yes, indeed.
But I don't want to give away too much of the tour, but other than to say that it's a fascinating tour and it's an interesting tour and it's a heart-wrenching tour, and I know that I came away from it completely moved and with a lot of different emotions and thoughts and maybe, misconceptions that I had in my head corrected.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful tour. And I highly recommend it. But like you said, you are in a very remote part of Mayo, and you're kind of the very, very southern edge. I mean, it's like you leave Galway along the Killary Fjord, and you have to go completely around the fjord. And then when you get to the Uggool Valley, you're looking across and you're seeing, Galway, County Galway, where if you could, and like it's an hour clear around at least. And when, if you could cross it by boat, it would take you, only a portion of that. Yeah. It's quite a place. But, it really is just an amazing experience, and I can't thank you enough for, making me aware of it. Now, I know that you've had a very busy year, though. You've only been really conducting tours there just over a year now. Am I correct?
That's right, Jody. That's right. Oh, we're very, very, very satisfied with the way things are going. It's beyond our wildest expectations, to be quite honest with you. We're delighted the way people are responding to it, you said it all yourself there. Everybody who comes out there is feeling that they have experienced something exceptional, and quite extraordinary. And it's a great feeling to be part of that, actually,
It really
I thoroughly
is.
enjoyed it myself. Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
So not to draw away from the exceptionalism of your area, but this is a question that I ask everyone when they come onto my podcast, is 3 places, other places that you would recommend people visit. Now, like I said, you're very remote. You're very remote.
Yes,
and so,
yes.
Are there any other places that may be, not terribly far from you that you think people might be missing, or, highlights that they should check out? Or
Yeah, absolutely, Jody. I mean, where I am is totally off the beaten track, the tourism beaten track, if you like, totally. Lewisburg would be my nearest village here, and not a very beautiful village and a very beautiful place, and not visited at all as much as similar places in Kerry, for example, We have Clare Island here, which I'd recommend to anybody. The ferry goes from Lewisburg, from Runa Key, out to Clare Island, and it's a fabulous. It's another way of going back in time, really. You get out onto these offshore islands, because the people there are just, well, salt of the earth, really.
Right.
It's an experience in itself, and I thoroughly enjoy going out there myself. I don't know what your clients or your people would think of it, but I'm sure that they find it fascinating.
Right.
It's just different.
Oh, completely.
Apart from that, we have, I love the mountains anyway, and I love the remote places in the mountains. So I could live in Connemara anywhere, really, Yeah, it's my kind of thing,
It is a beautiful area and very close to you, very south of you. So, and people who are maybe visiting Connemara would find the Uggool Valley to be a very nice day trip, very doable. And you would pass through the villages around the fjord, and those are quite nice as well. So
absolutely, it's a wonderful drive from Connemara back down here, but it's a long drive, all right. But probably we're easiest got to from Westport, actually. And Westport is an up and coming tourism hub as well.
It's a lovely town.
We're more easy to reach from Westport. Yeah.
It is a lovely town. Well, Gerard, I want to thank you so much for chatting with me today. The memories I have of the Lost Valley and the feelings I have, I don't know that those are ever going to dissipate. I read through my journal from our last trip, and I read what I wrote, and it just really takes me back to the feelings and the experiences of that day. And I can't thank you enough again for having us and taking us on the tour, and then again talking to me today. And I wish you all the best, you and your lovely wife, because you really do have just, the perfect, untouched, unspoiled bit of Ireland right there under your feet, and it's amazing that you share it the way you do.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you. It's my pleasure to speak with you and to take you through the valley. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.